Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Alien Earth. After dying at the end of our last breakdown, I've been put into the body of a synth. And I'm definitely human. I am not a hybrid. In this video, we're going to be going through episode 3, which is titled Metamorphosis. It's possible that this is actually a nod to the book of the same name by author Franz Kafka, in that a man awakens one day to find himself transformed into an insect. It's a story about what it means to be human, transformation into a monster, alienation, and ultimately exile, which are all things you can apply to the show. Be it AI or alien, there's lots of things to talk about, and throughout this video we'll be breaking down the Easter eggs, hidden details, and things you might have missed. We'll also have a theory time as well. Whereas the first two episodes leaned heavily into nostalgia, this takes a bit of a different direction. Mostly ditches the homages, or at least the most obvious ones, and blazes its own trail with a big cliffhanger ending. We see more of New Siam and the experiments on Neverland, and get lots and lots of world building. Now I actually think what we're seeing is what would have basically happened if the Nostromo returned to Earth. A sort of what if. Though I dinged episode 1 for basically doing the opening of Alien shot for shot, I think it set the stage for the story that it's telling. A sort of alternate history which Noah Hawley has somewhat said the show is. Basically, what if the space truckers returned to Earth with the eggs? Anyway, we begin with the FX logo written in the same green display as the mother computer. We then get the iconic title text, which is once more used over a recap of the first two episodes. Again, this follows the title sequence from the start of Alien that was later used in Prometheus, Covenant, and Romulus. With the music hitting like this though, I was in awe, and I thought, wow, a recap can be pure cinema. If you skip the intro, I will kill you. We then get new shots of the alien's body, and other aspects of this were shown in the prior episodes. I did even wonder if this is them looking over it in the lab, which is something that happens in the episode after its death. Now we open with Wendy running to save her brother. She sprints through a corridor where the damage has made it look like a heart. It's also coloured red at points due to the lighting. Bit of a reach here, but she is running to her heart, aka her brother, Reachley Scott. Either way, it's sort of an alien Romulus situation. There's a robot and human who are siblings, with the former saving their Flashbacks sister. Here we have a human brother saved by a robotic sister. It's a really interesting dynamic, and that was easily one of the best parts of Romulus. The idea of humanity is front and center in this episode though, as Morrow's also fascinated by the hybrids. My guy's been in space like it's been 65 years, crash lands on Earth and then finds robot kids. During interviews, it has been said that he owes his life to Yutani, and this explains why he's so loyal to the mission, even at the expense of the crew. Morrow has some deep connection pre-Maginot, Maginot, butchered it last time, and thank you for your comments, but I am very excited to learn Morrow's backstory. Maginot. No, not Maginot. He's half man, half machine. What does it mean? And I think he may end up trying to become a hybrid. This would take him towards immortality, whereas at the moment he's still human. It also plays into the overall themes of the show as well. Kirsch wants the kids to embrace that they're machines, whereas Dame Sylvia just sees them as kids.
She's not human anymore. Why are we pretending she is?
I am human.
In the middle is Joe, who I feel will go back and forth on whether Wendy's still his sister. Like, even down to the fact that he still calls her Marcy. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. The kids are then tasked with retrieving the samples as Kirsch studies the files on the computers. We can see the eye thing is designated as species 64, and its full name is Trypandichnia ocellus, or T-ocellus for short, in the same way that Tyrannosaurus rex is shortened down to T-rex. Ocellus is another term for an eye, and Tirapasronocha is a parasitic tapeworm that infects fish. Look, I'm a YouTuber, mate, not a doctor. Timothy Oliphant is superb though as the reluctant synthetic babysitter, telling one of the guys to look with your eyes and not your hands. That had me cracking up because, yeah, any parent out there, they know exactly that happens quite a lot in very dangerous situations sometimes. I do think he will start to rival Boy Cavalier though, as the experiments start to unfold. I mean, putting eggs on an island with humans is a recipe for disaster, and he clearly doesn't value human life. The hybrid acting here is also very detailed, as he acts like a scorned child. We then learn more about the kids, and it's not all a fairy tale on Neverland. We see Nibs staring creepily at Dissecting, and it's almost like she's looking into the abyss. kind of like it's staring directly into her soul. Last time we did get her staring into a mirror while Cavalier read them Peter Pan. She seems the most traumatized by her death and rebirth, and we flash back to her human body. The way this is shot is almost like a funeral. There she lays dead on the slab while holding flowers. I can imagine it would really mess with your head, as it's a literal out-of-body experience. Whenever those are reported, the person often says they were floating in the air looking down at their body, which is what all the kids would have experienced. She also remembers being attacked by the eyeball. She seemed like a manic pixie dream girl at first, but is now questioning the whys of the whole program. Why couldn't she keep her name?
Why?
Why does she have to be called Nibs?
Why?
Why does no one ever hit the thumbs up?
Why?
I think she just might be the person who brings everything crashing down, and she'll see how they're treating them like slaves. No kid wants to be forced into this nightmare situation, and Cavalier can see everything they do. I'm guessing he also has protocols put in place to shut them down in case they go rogue. They are very much experiments as well, and share more with the creatures than they do with the humans. I also like her namesake Nibs, as it juxtaposes her personality. She seems withdrawn and not really there, while Nibs in Peter Pan is a happy, cheerful boy. In some tellings, he doesn't make it to Neverland and falls behind on the way. So this could highlight the character's reluctance to get fully on board with the process. Did make me laugh when she asked why they were called the Lost Boys when half of them are girls. Cavalier's first name is of course also Boy, so potentially they were called that by the creative team to give a little nod to who owns them. Kinda like Charlie's Angels. She also says, why put them in adult bodies when they're not supposed to grow up?
Why?
This really reminds you that they aren't grown up, they're just kids inside a grown-up's body. They're kept completely secret and will likely be covered up just like the Xenomorphs. I always wondered how they were going to work it with them being on Earth before the Nostromo mission happens. However, the fact that everything's taken to Neverland, that could easily explain why no one's ever heard about them. And also why Boy Cavalier was never heard from again, which, oops, spoiler alert. She's also a little bit jealous of Wendy for getting to be, well, Wendy. Nibs later starts to almost lose herself as she stares into the mirror again, and we see those weird pressure washers. Curly reminds her, though, Wendy was the first, which is why she's called that. However, later we also see Curly shares the same resentment towards Cavalier's favourite girl. She even tries to usurp her as the number one. So this scene kind of feels like it's foreshadowing her shooting her shot for when Wendy's out of commission. She steps up to report to Boy Cavalier, and later on he does seem somewhat impressed by her initiative. But back to the start, Kirsch is called and told to collect the samples and bring them back. To him, $1 trillion has just landed on his lap. He calls them bioweapons, which Whale and Yutani have an entire department for. In Alien 3, Michael Bishop even went to retrieve Ripley personally, along with the alien inside of her. Predator Badlands also features that division, as it's on a capsule that houses a damaged synthetic. It looks like we've seen all the samples though, but because of this trailer, it was thought Ayucha may have been one of them. I do wonder if the show will connect to Predator in some way, as the two franchises, they're of course married together. That goes to our merch store below the video as well. There we have a whole host of Alien and Predator inspired t-shirts, ranging from our perfect organism based on the Vitruvian Man to our game over one as well. We've also just launched our Predator tattoo inspired one that contains a quote from Predator Badlands. If you want to pick some up, then we're also running a discount where you get 20% off if you buy 3. Yep, shabow! Anyway, Cavalier handwaves the protests and says he has a high quarantine lab in the basement. Yeah, mate, that's totally not gonna go all Pete Tong, is it? What he truly cares about, though, is Wendy. He implies that she's the most special, and I do wonder if they implanted something extra into her. This may be how she's able to pick up on the signals from the eggs. It's at this point that we then catch up with Wendy and see her drop down into a parking garage. This appears to be on the basement floor, and it reminds me a lot of the areas in Hadley's Hope, namely during the chase. She then finds Joe trapped in a meat truck, and he's in the early stages of being turned into a cocoon. The original Alien had a deleted scene that saw Dallas stuck to the walls, and Aliens also had a similar scene with a woman that said, "Kill me," and then a deleted scene that featured Burke, who was going to be used as a cocoon as well. So yeah, that's definitely what they're doing here. A cocoon scene was also cut from Alien 3, but Resurrection had a notable scene that saw the newly born. There were also hanging meat carcasses at the start of Alien 3 in the version where the creature was born from an ox. Can't remember if that's the assembly cut or if that's a theatrical, but one of the versions, I think it's the assembly cut, it's born from an ox instead of a dog. It also looks like the same spray stuff that Morrow used last week, so it nicely builds off that webbing image. I do even wonder if the stuff in his gun was reverse engineered from the samples. The meat truck to me is also reminiscent of Predator 2, where the city hunter had a taste for beef. There we saw the OWF confront the Ucha inside a meatpacking plant, but they got instantly wiped out. So that might be a reach, but yeah, just the way the franchises are brought together did make me think of that. Noah Hawley though, he provides some incredible tension here. The Xenomorph sticks its head through the sheet door, but then clearly senses she's a threat. So it Resident Evil 2 William Birkins it and attacks from the ceiling. It's also similar to the elevator scene in Terminator 2 when the T-1000 attacks from the roof. Wendy then stabs the alien, only for acid to pour out. It dripping down from the ceiling is very reminiscent of when they cut the facehugger's digit in the original Alien. We then get a great bit where the sets flip sideways and the container's overturned. This feels like a real horror movie as we see Joe walk out with a meat hook. He then gets stabbed with a Xenomorph's tail, providing a solid jump scare. The same thing happened to Bishop at the end of Aliens, as well as Chopper in Aliens vs Predator. As he crawls out, we can also hear he's struggling to breathe, and they of course later remove his lung. So I do feel like it was damaged. They did the surgery and were like, hey, we can infect this, let's bloody do it. It's almost game over man though, as he gets slobbered on by the alien. However, Wendy arrives and saves the day. She pierces the hook through its second mouth or tongue, and we then see a showdown. We are about to reach here as well, so bear with me. The siblings used a hook to lure the alien, which may be a callback to Captain Hook from Peter Pan, making this Xenomorph somewhat the crocodile from that story. Maybe. Perhaps. Probably not. Running to the shutter door, it reminds me of Ripley trying to lure an alien to the airlock. In Alien 1, she jettisons it out the escape ship, while in Alien she uses the power loader to get it to the airlock. In Alien 3, they also trapped it behind a door, and there it was held prisoner for quite a bit. Joe then mans the door controls as Wendy's locked in with the beast. Luckily, she manages to lop its head off with the guillotine, and the creature's finally defeated. Which I wasn't expecting at all. Kinda thought we'd be with this one for most of the series, but it shows how capable that Wendy is. However, she's heavily damaged in the process. We can see her bleeding the white milky liquid that the other synthetics in the franchise have had. I used this image for the thumbnail of our trailer breakdown last week, and yeah, got a couple of comments saying how it might look like something else out of context. You dirty pieces of shit. Luckily, the brother and sister will be taken back to Neverland and fixed up. They can fix up anything. Slightly, however, is stuck looking over the eggs when Smee arrives. The former steps in some slime and then picks up some skin, which is exactly like the first alien. There we saw Brett do the same thing just before he died, which is a very nice callback. Even the chain dangling in the doors are the same, and yeah, this nicely plays with your expectations. Now these are clearly the most childish of the bunch, and they say a spaceship underground is a very dumb idea. Now, being a big Predator fan, I did wonder if this was poking fun at the Lost Tribe ship being under LA in Predator 2. I mean, how did it get under the building? If you're a fan of the franchise, and you know that's been a big debate back and forth over the years. They're totally unfazed by the eggs though, and it's so funny seeing them talking like kids. Reminds me of stuff like Stand By Me, The Goonies, or even The Lost Boys, eh? Did kind of take me out of the scene a bit though, when they kept saying bro. I don't know, that's kind of like what kids today would say, and I didn't think I'd ever hear it in the Alien universe, especially with it being 2120, or what the 70s thought that 2120 would be.
The magnificent far-off year of 2002.
The goofiness, though, that's quickly broken up by the arrival of Morrow. The boys barely even know what they are, and Morrow's baffled by their entire existence. I think that's why he even puts a taser down, as I don't know if it would even have an effect. He wants to know what they are and why they're here. However, it's classified, but in the end, the lads give up just enough information for him. Now, you know, I've been theorizing this, but I do feel this hints towards how Morrow might want to go full synthetic, as at the moment he's only a cyborg. But yeah, they're giving up lots of info they shouldn't, and it's similar how Slightly gave up that Wendy was Joe's sister. I mean, they are kids at the end of the day though. Morrow then explains how he was the chief security officer on the Maginot. They said they found the eggs on the moon, and that's likely LV-46. It's actually one of the 3 moons that orbit Calpamos. So it's reasonable to assume that these eggs must have come from the planet. We also heard last week that a lot of people died on the mission. Now in Alien, it wasn't a 65-year mission, so I do wonder if these guys have gone beyond LV-426. They may have stopped along the way, but with there being 5 different specimens, they could have visited lots of planets across the universe. So we may learn about the other pit stops. He then downloads the data from the ship using a Philips Hue LED strip and mentions how Mother said the crew's lives don't matter. Only the bounty must be saved. This is similar to how Ash jeopardized the crew's lives just to ensure that the Xenomorphs were sent to the company. Crew Expendable, it was famously called, which is also the name of the DLC in Alien Isolation. It's also what we saw in the first episode when he went into Mother's command center and basically talked to Mother directly. Morrow then explains how there's a feeling when this is told to him and how you can only save yourself. He's asked if he's a robot and he then replies by saying, "Wouldn't that be nice?" Which basically means he doesn't want the worst parts of being a man. He still harbors guilt about the crew dying and saving himself. If he was a robot though, he wouldn't have any of that guilt and would just be free from his torment. In reality though, he was a chief security officer, so they all died on his watch. However, he's also extremely loyal to the company. It's good to get some more info on him as well, as it did seem like he was at fault for the crash, but now I'm not so sure. Based on his words though, I feel that the eggs hatched and caused all sorts of chaos. He then basically went to the computer to ask what to do, and it said, "Look mate, as long as the eggs are okay, fuck the rest, we don't have to pay them." Unlike Alien as well, you have to remember that this had other specimens on board the ship, so who knows what else they got up to. We also saw how members of the crew looked down on him for being a hybrid, so they may have even mistrusted him, and thus tempers flared and he ended up choosing a side, which was himself. He then asks them what they would do in the same scenario and if they could harm others. He's confused as they then bring up parents and also talk about it would have to matter if someone was bad or not. In his mind though, Morrow's told what the orders are and he must follow them no matter what. He's sort of programmed in what to do, and even though he's human, parts of him, beyond his, robotic parts, also think like a machine. They have that sense of logic, and everyone has to kind of dehumanize themselves and shut themselves off and be cold in, making decisions that often include life and death, which I'm sure everyone, knows. Not that you have to make life and death decisions often, but yeah, you can shut down your emotions if it really requires it. At the moment though, he just wants to make sure his boss's data doesn't get into the wrong hands, and thus he uploads and then erases it. I think with him being in Prodigy Land, he might also be worried he could be compromised. This mind uploading is also likely similar to what the crew went through when they were copied. I even wonder if Morrow might be killed and then brought back down the line due to this upload. We see how strenuous it is on him though, which kind of plays in the fact how difficult it is to copy across adults, whereas kids don't have that difficulty, which was something that Cavalier said. Channeling the T-1000, he then makes a blade come out of his hand and he interrogates slightly, asking when is a machine not a machine. This later gets questioned by Boy Cavalier's security goon. He says he doesn't have friends, which he will likely use to manipulate Puss slightly. Knowing their children, he can twist them easier, which is something Cavalier is playing upon as well. Kirsch then arrives, describing himself as a neighbor, and this ship as being the ball that's landed in his garden. It's basically like when a big boy, you remember being a kid, mate, a big boy like Ryan Airy showed up and they kicked you, and then your dad showed up and was like, fuck off and subscribe to Heavy Spoilers instead. He makes him back off, and I loved seeing the egg open up next to Morrow. We can see the face hugger scuttling inside, which is also something we witnessed in Alien. It's also like the moment in Aliens where Ripley goes to leave the Queen's nest and the eggs open up. So he's still more human than machine because the eggs don't activate around the synths. They can somehow detect what's human and what isn't, and this is why later on we get Kirsch blocking out all humans from the lab. We then get a great time lapse as we see the cleanup. The Prodigy forces then deal with the aftermath of the chaos while Joe and Wendy are taken off on stretchers. I liked how she was put on the same bed thing that she was also transferred on. As she's pulled out, we can see the headpiece, which I imagine handles updates and resets. This is why she sleeps in it basically. Technically, machines shouldn't need sleep, so it might be like setting your phone to update overnight. Must be some sort of diagnostic too low. It's also the same thing that wakes her up when she gets signals from the eggs. Later we learn how she's had all her systems turned off, and this is in order to try and save her. The alien is then brought in on a forklift, which eagle-eyed viewers will likely spot an early version of the power loader. Like the arms on it are exactly the same.
Where you want it?
Morrow's body though hasn't been recovered, and as we learn, he's managed to escape. The search and rescue team look absolutely exhausted though, and at least 2 of them have been killed. The hybrids also look tired despite being machines, and Curly stares at Wendy, probably planning to take her job. It's very much like a Vietnam movie at this point though. They return to the base on the futuristic versions of the Huey, and the score itself is also extremely similar to those kind of movies. Considering that the Vietnam War took place in the 70s, it's pretty close to building off the style that would have been commonplace when they made them. Well, the originals anyway. James Cameron even modelled the colonial marines after the soldiers who fought in the war, and that style's carried across here. Both groups are then given a god of honour when the Xenos brought in. It's rather similar to the opening of Alien Romulus. There we see the alien from the Nostromo brought aboard a ship and then removed. Kirsch also looks smug as he leads the kids in, and the specimens enter the facility. The alien is here with a severed head, and Cavalier looks giddy with excitement at his brand new toy. He and Adrian Edmondson stare down from the glass room, which feels like a repeat of when Wendy was getting the sick kids to join. We also see one of the security team has a cigar, which was something that reminded me of Sergeant Apone in Aliens. The samples are then placed in the lab as he says, "Well done" to his hybrids. Toodles is beaming when this happens, as in a way, Cavalier's like a godlike figure to them. So why Curly seeks his approval so badly? To the left of Cavalier, we can see a black spider-like thing in a tube. So far, we haven't seen this in action, and I do wonder if it's going to play into creating an alien queen. It's thought by Bishop that the royal jelly is used to create a queen, which is similar to honeybees. There, when the hive decides they need a new queen, they use this jelly to feed the larval bee and then make it into that. Sciencey there. However, in other books, comics, and games, an alien queen can simply be evolved from a normal xenomorph. Now, it might not be that, but it would be interesting if the fluid here somehow helps create and feed that. As we cut to Kirsch, we can also see a spindly thing in a tank of liquid. I do believe that this was what was in the skylight at the start of episode 2, where something crawled away behind Joe. Cavalier talks about how it's like charting an undiscovered country, which may be playing off Star Trek, The Undiscovered Country. May not be, but whenever I hear that, that's what I think, mate. It may also be a reference to Hamlet, in that the prince recites the legendary to be or not to be soliloquy, which I did wonder if that was playing into that "are you a machine or not a machine" thing. When is a machine not a machine, he said. There though, Hamlet wonders whether it's noble to avenge his father's death, but also ruminates on life and death itself. He refers to death as an undiscovered country, but it's one that, from whose bourne no traveller returns. It's exactly what Boy Cavalier's doing as well. He's trying to traverse death and stop it from ever happening again. Well, providing you have the money to pay for it. As he's no doubt a vicarious reader, I suspect he is indeed quoting the bard here. Like Kane and Almost Joe, Boy Cavalier heads to the egg and puts his face up next to it. Starts to basically transfix him, and yeah, you can see like the hypnotic pull that these eggs have towards people interested in science. Either way, Kirsch kicks him out and tells him how there's a proto-creature that bursts out of humans. The dynamic has now shifted. The trillionaire prodigy can't be on their floor as he's limited by his humanity. Now it's the machines who can make the discoveries that he can't. Even going to the ship was something that was far less dangerous for them than it would have been for him. Kirsch is now in complete control, and I love the reflection shot where he appears much bigger than his boss. Humans are now banned from the floor. However, part of me thinks that life finds a way, and curiosity will ultimately get the better of them. Much like sticking your face above an egg. We then see Slightly and Smee chilling on the most 70s sofa to exist and get some drawings of the beast. Usually, you know, you'd see people writing a diary or record a video log, but these guys are kids. The only way they know how to process what happened is through doing drawings, which is something that psychologists often use to basically make kids explain what trauma that they've gone through. We also see Smee making a paper aeroplane, which is exactly what Nibs was doing last week. On the wall we can see a picture of a kid, and it might be there to reinforce that they're children. They obviously can't see their bodies most of the time, so might forget what they look like. It's only upon facing the mirror like Nibs that they start to have a moment of reflection. Adam Eanes comes in to talk to them and makes me wildly uncomfortable as he tries to find out more about Morrow. Now, I know that's Adrian Edmondson, but I cannot and see Edward or Vivian from Bottom and the young ones, respectively. I love the colour on the suit though, but he's very intimidating. Their childishness is on full display here as Smee's scared of Morrow. Mate, your colleague took down a Xenomorph, I'm sure you'll be fine. It's also revealed to them that everything they do and say is recorded, which is something they had no idea about. Instantly, I thought of those parents who track their kids' phones and even those secret teddy bear cameras. The logo for Prodigy, you know, it is of course a teddy bear and they've basically signed away their privacy. Afterwards though, Kirsch watches them to see their behaviour, which makes me wonder if he has other plans. He's expressed his disdain at them being human-like, so he may want to force them towards being machines. David loved a good old experiment as well, and synths always have that sinister side to them, or synthesized side to them. We then hear how Morrow will likely be unable to infiltrate the island, which kinda sets up why no one knows about this thing later in the timeline. Again, I'm kinda guessing that everything is going to be contained to the island and we'll see the outbreak then covered up. In regards to everything, like, you know, Cavalier, he's a massively rich man, very powerful, but we never hear about him in the other movies, and I know that's because this is made after those ones, but in terms of storytelling, I don't think he's making it out of it. Cutting to New Siam, we get focus of a boat on a river, which is just like how Joe was introduced. Morrow then steals food while on the run and makes a call to be extracted. Speaking with Ms. Yutani, they're both unsure of who the other person is. It's been over 60 years and the Yutani he knew was her grandmother. He has the data on the specimens, but they need the actual specimens themselves. Again, we've kind of touched upon this before, but it's been said he's deeply loyal to Yutani and owes them a life debt. So probably something that we're going to find out more about in one of the other episodes. If we do get that flashback on the ship, on the Machino, I can imagine the people being like, why are you still doing this? Why can't we just kill it? And then we'll probably learn exactly what happened. That would be my theory. I'm not going to theory time it though. It's really cool seeing a live action Yutani again though, and we haven't seen one since Alien vs Predator Requiem. That Yutani we saw could be the grandmother that's mentioned here, and Prometheus's Wayland may even be a descendant of the one we saw in Alien vs Predator. It was thought the character was going to be initially portrayed by Michelle Yeoh in Prometheus, but the part was then rewritten to be Wayland's daughter. That was all because of Mad Max Fury Road, and they realized when that got delayed they could get Charlize Theron in the movie more, so yeah, they basically restructured the whole thing. Morrow clearly knows he can manipulate slightly though, and he wants them back as the samples are his life's work. He's basically sort of like a fish out of water, and he realizes the world's changed radically in the decades that he's been gone. The young upstart Cavalier has come in and challenged the titans like Wayland Yutani in the world of business. During the phone call, I also love the way the camera's fixed to create the impression that she's almost walking on water. Just a really cool visual, and with her being so high up while he's down in the gutter, yeah, you can see how they're showing who's in charge. Yutani also says,
run by a child.
Which may again hint that Boy's actually a boy who put himself into a hybrid. Wendy constantly called him the boy genius last week, and I think this could also be a possibility. At this point, we then cut back to Cavalier. He puts down his Puzz 3D when Curly mugs him off by saying, smart people don't ask dumb questions. Wendy is only the favourite as she's the first, and he's surprised that she doesn't care that this is the room she was made in. She's not bothered about where she's been, but only where she can go, which is kind of a comment on her ambition. On the flip side of this, Wendy's only bothered about her brother, which is very much an element of her past. In the first two episodes, Cavalier mentioned how he just wanted an interesting conversation, but I think he also wants more than that. Being a trillionaire and in control of a whole city and people's lives, it's rare that anyone would ever stand up to him, which is something that we saw with the technician earlier. He thought that the decision his boss was making was stupid, which was overheard by said boss. He's behind me, isn't he? Boy urged him to grow a spine and stand up to him though. The technician shrunk and Dame Sylvia had to cool down the situation. Now huge shoutouts to Harry Evans 11111 on our last video for bringing up a really interesting theory. They said that Cavalier might actually be a synth and that Wayland could have moved his mind over into it. He seems to have just popped up out of nowhere, and I think it would be a pretty cool twist. The only issue is that boys said it only tends to work on young minds, which is why they have to select kids. However, you'd only know that if you did it on an adult, which may also hint to some of the other people that they've tried it on. Curly's annoyed that all Wendy cares about is her brother, when she thinks about how to make life better, even wanting to be Boy's successor at some point. Now, we also discover she's learned French. It's Matrix style where stuff just gets uploaded to your brain, so technically she didn't learn French, she just got a software patch. I guess that beats having to watch your back for the Duolingo bird though. Oh no! Lo siento, señor Duo! Wendy is more human though, and that's despite having the capabilities to just think up amazing inventions. She wants to save her brother and use her abilities to do so. She's not about just making things to make the rich richer. That hasn't benefited anyone, and despite these companies projecting that they're helping humanity, poverty and wealth inequality, that all still exists. Boy again enforces the idea of why they needed to be children, and he says how prodigy is prodigy because prodigies are kids. They're able to be free and uninhibited due to having an infinite imagination and creativity. Now he's going to send her some recordings and books to swat up on so he can finally have an interesting conversation. Well, he says once she's read them, they can play, which creeped me out a bit.
I'm getting the word nonce.
Samuel Blanken, though, is just superb as the smug tech CEO. He's just so slimy and self-assured and has the most punchable face I've ever seen. After me. Makes me a bit angry how much Witcher Blood Origins wasted him. Witcher fans will know how layered his character was, but yeah, I won't dwell on that too much. Now, part of me thinks her playtime's gonna be a total failure. She's eager for his approval and to usurp Wendy. As Curly said, though, her character was called Pickles in the book. So even then, she's not one of the famous Lost Boys, and yeah, don't feel like she's gonna go to the forefront like Wendy. She is fully indoctrinated by power though, and the corporate society, whereas Wendy hasn't changed. All she cares about is family, and again, yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic. It's ambition and drive at the expense of others versus doing what you can to help who you care about. As Plato says, only those who do not seek power are qualified to hold it. Now, I also wonder how this is going to play into the whole Peter Pan metaphor as well. Peter Pan was all about growing up, and though there was the idea that they could stay young forever, ultimately the characters accepted that they needed to leave Neverland. Wendy was told by her father in the beginning to grow up, and that she couldn't sleep in the nursery anymore. In the end, she says, "I'm ready to grow up," and have her own bedroom, but her father says, "You can stay where you are." So this may be a theme that gets explored later down the line. She could end up leaving Neverland and go off with her brother to become her own person. We then catch up with Slightly, who is watching a movie which is, I believe, the 2013 animated movie Epic, which was produced by Disney, who also own this show. Now, you might have noticed before that Morrow took a contact lens looking thing from his finger. He then grabbed Slightly, and we got a shot where we could see something being absorbed by the character's neck. Morrow has hacked him, and much in the same way the facehugger puts something in your body, Morrow's doing the same thing here, which is almost parasitic. He's also doing this while looking up the company, and we see the history of Prodigy. The first article lists how Boy crashed his car while driving at the age of 15. He was asked why he was even driving it himself when he's made billions off AI, kind of showing how reckless he is and his clear disregard for the rules. We also learn how Prodigy burst its way onto the scene. In doing this, it helped turn the three powerful companies, aka the Triumvirate, into five. Originally, Weyland-Yutani, Dynamic Corporation, and Threshold held all the power. Interestingly, Hyperdyne Systems isn't listed, but they were name dropped in Aliens. Lynch and Prodigy then joined, which made it five. Sadly, the only ones we've explored in the lore are Weyland-Yutani, but I do hope that we see more beyond Prodigy. Morrow then opens up the article, and we learn how Prodigy ceded territory from North America and Southeast Asia. This builds upon the social study lessons that Malachite got in the Maginot. In South America, we learn there was actually a civil war which resulted in drought and famine. We know that Weyland-Yutani owned both South and North America, and this clearly came at the expense of the people. The article explains that an abundance of natural palladium's also been found in the South. It's because of this that the Americas were brought under some sort of unity. Palladium has a wide range of uses, but here I imagine it's sought after because it's great for soldering and it's also used heavily in printing circuit boards. While the oil rush powered the 1900s until now, rare minerals are becoming the new oil. Things that are used in electric vehicles, circuit boards, and semiconductors, they'll become more and more essentials as countries race to win the AI wars. A scramble for land is also important as it mirrors the companies desperate to find places to plonk down their data centers. Something that is actually explored in Ari Aster's Eddington. Below this information, they then tease a new update to the robotics space. These are of course what the kids are, and immortality would be a hot property. We also discover that since then, Boy's thrown himself into his work due to grieving over a death. Cuts off before it says who it is, but I think this line is very important. Someone close to him died, which no doubt spurred him on to solve immortality and move people's consciousness into hybrids. Now I even wonder if that death was caused by the car crash. That takes us to big theory time. Okay, so I wonder if in the car crash he accidentally killed his mother. The reason that Wendy could be special is because she was modeled after the mother that he lost. In the story of Peter Pan, the Lost Boys refer to Wendy as their mother. With Boy Cavalier being called Boy, he could see himself as being a lost boy due to no longer having a mother. Wendy looks a lot like Cavalier and both have the same colour skin, hair and eyes. Him seeing her as being more important could be because he recreated her as a synth. He's kind of stuck in his childhood and desperately looking for a mother figure. Even his logo with a childlike teddy bear, though it's a cool bit of design that reminds me a lot of techno record labels from the 90s, it's clear that he's seeking something back to his childhood. And yeah, if Wendy's his mother, I don't know, maybe Dame Sylvia's also a synth and she doesn't know it. There's lots of things going on, but that's the end of theory time. Who is Dame Sylvia as well? What's her relationship to Boy Cavalier? Could be anything, could be a synth, could be a mother, could be a hybrid. Now, lastly, we learn how his HQ has moved to an undisclosed location, which is of course the Neverland that we've seen in the show so far. During this conversation though, Slightly clearly doesn't want to talk to Morrow, especially with that terrifying atom breathing down his neck. But Morrow says, "Could you be my friend?" which kind of feels Mr. Rogers-y. The reality of what's going on though is immediately shown as we can see he's at a weird sex club. And yet very sinister. Just kind of plays in the nature of the darker side to everything. And it might also be a Matrix reference. Morrow then talks about his daughter desperately trying to connect with him. Turns out he had a child who it seemed died between his departure from Earth and his return. It reminds me a lot of Ripley, who also lost her daughter. When she set off she was a kid, but upon returning home in Aliens, she found out that she had died. This was expanded upon in Alien Isolation, where you play as Amanda Ripley. Obviously, you know she doesn't find her mother, but it's still an excellent game. It's something that also makes this investigation seem personal for him. I do wonder as well if the reason that he has robotic hands is purely because something happened in the past where his daughter died, potentially in a car crash as well. Utani may be the one who basically saved his body, made him into a cyborg, and then he swore this undying loyalty to pay her back for this debt. At this point, Morrow also uses Slightly's words against him and says everyone needs a friend. He also says don't let the bed bugs bite, which don't go near any of those weird specimens. As he leaves, we can also see a woman who's strapped to a spider web-like thingy. Look, I don't frequent these clubs. Might not be able to show it because of YouTube, but it could play into the bug and spider theme of these specimens. We then follow Nibs for a bit, and she sees that mysterious guy cleaning the wall. I felt like this might be a reference to Blade Runner, namely the guy who makes the eyes for the synths. Just as she does this, she touches her eye, but yeah, might be reaching. Cutting to Wendy, we then hear the interference and noise and she wakes up. It somehow turns on her brain device and she then goes wandering. I believe it's an ESP, which is why she's able to pick up on the hive mind. I'm keeping spoiler-free stuff that's been shown in the trailers out of this part of the breakdown, but they hint towards something that I'll talk about at the end, that I'll give you a spoiler warning on, but it could show the creatures are communicating with the other species, and maybe they'll end up working together. Like Xenomorph with the eye thingy on, that would be terrifying. Carrying around a big plant thing as well. As we see though, her brother's being operated on and we can see his lung on the screen. This evokes the imagery of the surgery monitors from earlier in the season. That was also building off Alien when they were scanning Kane. Just the idea of a corporation doing organ harvesting though without your consent to use your lung for a science experiment to infect it with a parasite, pretty mental. Elsewhere at the lab, we then see Kirsch carrying out an experiment. The kids are assisting in the investigation as Curly films the dissection. I love the cameras they use as well, which feel very VHS. gives a cool retro feel, which fits in the aesthetic that's matching the 70s era of the original. Kirsch also wears goggles that remind me a lot of Toad from X-Men. As this is going on, we see Wendy walk through the egg room, which has a mist similar to how Kane found them on the engineer's ship. The mist is one of the biggest mysteries about their creation, and at the Kevin Spoilers office, Matt, our editor, he was theorizing that this might even be a pheromone which lures people in being drawn towards the egg, which is a theory that I love, though Kane did have a helmet on, so I don't really know. Now it seems that the noise she picks up is the distress of the facehugger in the egg. She becomes distraught as the hybrids try to control the hugger and taser it, making it seem like she's one with them. Of course, her body's also electronic, so she doesn't feel pain, but she must be picking up on their communication method. Telepathy has been hinted at in Alien Queens, as well as the Alien Queen Mother. In Alien 3, the Xenomorph could also smell or sense the Queen inside Ripley. So again, she's very Ripley-esque. Might be that she can pick up on the telepathy itself and is sort of like a synthetic Alien Queen. Becomes so bad that she collapses when hearing the egg speak to her, and it did make me laugh how no one heard her behind them. The scene with Kirsch where they examine the facehuggers also very akin to Alien. After a let go of Kane, it ended up withering and dying, and they were able to examine it. This is when the acid blood popped out, which is a similar scene to what we get here. Even the angles are similar. However, they expand the lore and show us the embryo within. It's kind of freaky and tadpole-like, and we see it swimming in a tube. Cutting back to Joe, we see him in a pod which appears like the sleeping bay in Aliens. The ones in the first film were more horizontal, whereas this had more of a dome that curved down. Hope you're alright, mate. Do you mind if I just use your lung to make a xenomorph? It's creepy how they keep the lung pumping with oxygen, and they basically make a test tube xeno baby. Yay! We then get another rock song over the credits. This time it's Wherever I May Roam by Metallica. It was featured on Metallica's best record, the Black Album, which I feel a bit like in the internet's busiest music nerd saying the word record, but the song's about the band's relentless touring schedule. They had barely returned home, and guitarist Kirk Hammett had bought a house but had never even seen it due to their workload. The woes of touring would then be used again when the band covered the absolute classic Turn the Page by Bob Seger on 1998's Garage Inc. To me, this kind of speaks to Morrow. He's lived the space trucker life, and everyone around him's died. Just like how Ripley escaped from her ship, only to be thrust into the future due to being in stasis. Like, if you think about it, Ripley basically did Alien, the plot of Aliens, and then Alien 3 in what would be like a couple of weeks from her perception. They both had daughters that they never got to see for various reasons, and are stuck in this hellish corporate rule landscape. Basically, no one's get a break, and they're going from one thing to the other. Anyway, that wraps up the episode, and I think this was a lot of basically setting up things for the future. I really enjoyed it. It had a solid start, added lots to the lore, and yeah, overall had a fun time. I think the pacing is still off in the show, and they do drag things out at points. But overall, I'm gripped by the series and blown away by the production level. Now, some minor spoilers that have been shown in the trailers are going to be discussed in the video next, so if you don't want to know, then turn off now. However, there are some interesting things that we know are coming from the teasers. If you don't want to know that, then thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Love you. Thanks. Bunch of fucking twats there, mate, leaving the video. I bet they didn't hit the thumbs up. Anyway, the Weeks Ahead trailer, it showed the sheep we've seen that's gonna end up getting the eye. Mad sheep with an eye running around, mate. You're gonna be scared, I'll tell you that. We also have Wendy confirming that she can indeed hear the creatures. I'm not sure where it goes from here, but those are the two things that the trailer's confirmed. Either way, please drop a like on the video and leave a comment with all your thoughts below. If you want to follow us on Instagram, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. We're also doing a thing right now where I'm raising money for a cat and dog shelter, because I'm going to be doing a half marathon in September. So if you want to donate to that, we're almost at the target. It would really mean a lot, even if it's just a little bit. I appreciate that forever, and thank you. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos? If you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Last week we had loads of copyright issues with our Alien Earth breakdown episode 1 and 2 video, so we had to basically chop it up, turn all the clips into stills and upload it to get past the blocks and stuff. However, we put out a members video where it's all back to the original edit. It's a lot better to watch, so if you want to basically watch that, it's on the channel now. Anyway, thank you for clicking this one. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.